There's a spot in your yard that a squirrel keeps coming back to. Not because of food you have checked. There is nothing there, no buried cache, no fallen seed, no particular feature that would explain it. Just a patch of ground or a specific fence post or a corner of the garden that she returns to again and again, sometimes just to stand there for a moment before moving on. You have noticed it, you have probably wondered about it, you may have even mentioned it to someone and had them shrug it off as animal habit, random behavior, nothing worth thinking about. They were wrong. The spot your squirrel keeps returning to is not random. It is not habit in the empty sense of the word. It is a communication, a message being sent in the only language available to a creature who cannot speak, written in the only medium she has, which is her own repeated presence in a specific place. She is trying to tell you something. And tonight, for the first time, you are going to understand what it is. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to permanently change the way you look at every corner of your yard that a squirrel keeps coming back to. Today we are walking through 8 things a squirrel's returning spot is trying to tell you, what each kind of return means, and why the small creature you have been watching from your kitchen window has been sending you a message you did not know how to read until now. Stay with me from beginning to end because reason number 6 is the one that researchers did not believe until they documented it themselves. And the final one, number 8, is the one I think will stay with you the longest, especially if you have been watching the same squirrel return to the same spot for longer than you can remember. The first and most fundamental reason a squirrel returns to the same spot is memory, not vague general memory. Specific, precise, detailed memory of a meal that happened in that exact location. Researchers studying cache recovery in gray squirrels have documented that squirrels can remember the precise location of hundreds of individual food caches across a territory, returning to them weeks and sometimes months after the original burial. The accuracy of this spatial memory consistently surprises the scientists who study it. But here is what most people do not realize. A squirrel does not only remember where she buried food, she remembers where she found it, where it fell, where someone gave it to her, where the good foraging happened on a particular morning last October when the light came through the oak a certain way and the ground was soft and the world was generous. The spot she keeps returning to may look empty to you. To her, it is the location of a memory so precise it has coordinates. She is not looking for something that is still there. She is returning to the place where something good once was, checking, in the patient way of wild animals, whether the world has become generous again in that particular spot. If you have ever scattered seed or left food near a certain corner of your yard, the squirrel who found it has not forgotten. She never will. She will return to that spot for the rest of her life, not out of mindless habit, out of the kind of memory that knows exactly where the good things happened. Not all returns are about food, some of them are about something more fundamental than food. Safety. Squirrels are prey animals. Every moment of their lives involves a calculation about danger, where the hawks patrol, where the cats come from, which parts of the yard offer cover and which parts leave them exposed. Over months of living in your yard, the squirrel has built a detailed map of where she feels safe and where she does not. The spot she returns to most often, the specific location where she pauses, sits, sometimes eats, sometimes just exists for a moment before moving on, is the place that her entire nervous system has agreed is the safest available point in her territory. Researchers studying anti-predator behavior in small mammals have found that urban squirrels develop highly specific safe zones within their home range, locations they return to repeatedly, especially when stressed or uncertain because those locations have never produced a threat. The absence of danger experienced repeatedly over time becomes a positive signal. A place that has never been dangerous is the closest thing a squirrel has to the word safe. The spot your squirrel keeps coming back to is her safe place. In the whole complicated, dangerous geometry of her small life, she has identified that particular square foot of your yard as the place where nothing bad has ever happened. And she keeps coming back to it the way anyone returns to what has never hurt them. Sit with that for a moment. You built that safety. Your yard, your presence, your predictable gentle behavior in that space, you made that spot safe. She is not just returning to a location, she is returning to the feeling of being safe, and that feeling has your yard's address on it. This is the one that surprises people when they first understand it. The squirrel in your yard had options. Squirrels are not bound to a single property the way some animals are. They move through multiple yards, multiple territories, and they make choices about where to spend their time based on a complex calculation of resources, safety, and familiarity. The fact that she keeps returning to a specific spot in your yard, not the yard next door, not the park 2 streets over, but this yard, this specific corner, means she has made a decision. She has chosen this place. And the repeated return to the same spot is how she marks and reinforces that choice, rewriting it into her nervous system a little more deeply each time she comes back. Researchers studying home range establishment in urban squirrels have found that the formation of a core territory, the area a squirrel returns to most consistently, happens through a process of repeated positive experiences in specific locations. Each return that ends without danger, with food, with the familiar smell of a known environment, deepens the attachment. Your yard is her chosen place. The spot she keeps returning to is the center of that choice. She is not wandering through and happening to stop there. She is coming home, in the only way available to a creature who cannot say the word. She is telling you that this is where she belongs. And she has decided that partly because of you. This one is more literal than the others, but no less remarkable. If a squirrel returns repeatedly to the same spot in the earth, the same patch of soil near the oak root, the same corner of the garden bed, there is a significant chance that something is buried there. Something she put there herself in the careful, deliberate way squirrels cache food for the future. But here is what makes this interesting. The squirrel does not return to cached food randomly or on a fixed schedule. She returns when she needs it, when other food sources are scarce, when the weather has been harsh, when the calculation of energy expenditure says it is time to retrieve what she saved. Her return to that spot is a decision based on current conditions read against a stored memory of past provision. Researchers studying squirrel caching behavior have found that the timing of cache retrieval is not random, but appears to be connected to environmental cues, temperature, food availability, stress hormones, that trigger the memory of stored resources at exactly the moment they are most needed. When she comes back to that spot repeatedly, she is not just retrieving food. She is demonstrating a relationship with time that most of us never attribute to an animal that small. She saved something. She remembered where she saved it. She's coming back to it at the right moment. That is not instinct in the empty sense. That is planning. That is a small wild creature managing her own future in the only way available to her. And she is doing it in your yard, in the corner you pass every morning without knowing what is underneath. Trust is not a word we use easily about wild animals, but the research on squirrel behavior is beginning to suggest that something very close to trust, a learned positive expectation about a specific location associated with a specific presence, is exactly what is operating when a squirrel returns to the same spot near a human household again and again. Researchers studying habituation and positive conditioning in urban squirrels have found that repeated positive experiences in a specific location associated with a specific human, food given, no threat received, predictable gentle behavior observed, produce a measurable change in the squirrel's physiological stress response in that location. Her cortisol levels drop, her vigilance decreases, her body relaxes in ways it does not relax elsewhere. She does not have the word trust, but her body has learned the feeling of it, and her feet keep carrying her back to the place where her body feels that way. The spot she returns to near your kitchen door, near the porch railing, near the corner where you sometimes sit in the evening, that spot is associated in her nervous system with you, with your presence, with the particular safety and predictability that you have offered her without knowing you were offering anything at all. You may not have thought of yourself as someone a wild animal trusts, but she has thought of you that way for longer than you know. The returned spot is how she shows it. In the small ways available to her, she keeps coming back to the place where you are. That is not nothing. In a wild animal's life, that is almost everything. This is the one researchers did not believe until they documented it themselves. The spot your squirrel returns to most consistently, especially if it is elevated, especially if it has a clear line of sight to your house, especially if she tends to arrive there and then simply sit for a while before doing anything else, may not be primarily about food or safety in the conventional sense. It may be an observation post, a place she has specifically selected because from that location she can see you. Studies examining the spatial positioning of urban squirrels relative to human activity have found that habituated squirrels, those who have learned specific humans over time, frequently select resting and foraging positions that maintain a direct visual line to the human they have associated with food and safety. The position is not random, it is chosen, and it is chosen for what it allows her to see. The fence post she keeps returning to may be precisely the fence post from which your kitchen window is most visible. The garden wall she sits on every morning may be the exact spot from which the back door and the porch are both in view at once. The corner of the yard she gravitates toward may be the corner that gives her the longest sightline across the space where you move. She is not just returning to a spot, she is returning to her best view of you. She has been watching you from there, watching your schedule, your movements, your moods as best she can read them from that distance. She picked that spot because it lets her see you, and she keeps coming back because you keep being worth watching. You have been observed from a carefully chosen position by a small wild creature who selected the best possible vantage point for the specific purpose of keeping track of you, and you never knew. Not all of the spot's messages are about you, some of them are about time. Squirrels are exquisitely sensitive to seasonal change, the lengthening and shortening of days, the shifting of temperature, the changes in food availability that come with the turning of the year. And certain locations in a yard become significant at specific times of year for reasons that have nothing to do with the spot's year-round value. A patch of ground near a particular tree may be the place where the most acorns fall in October. A corner near the garden wall may be the spot that gets the first warmth of the sun in early spring. A specific section of fence may be where the wind breaks in November in a way that creates a sheltered microclimate unavailable anywhere else in the yard. Researchers studying seasonal patterns in squirrel territory use have found that the core spots within a squirrel's home range shift slightly with the seasons, the same animal emphasizing different locations at different times of year in response to changing environmental conditions that humans rarely notice. When your squirrel begins returning more frequently to a spot she's been ignoring for weeks, she may be telling you something about the season before the season has fully announced itself. She senses what is coming in the temperature of the ground and the quality of the light and the smell of the air in ways that no instrument we have built can quite replicate, and she acts on that information by repositioning herself in the landscape. She is reading a calendar written in things you cannot see, and she is marking the turning of the page by coming back to the same spot, the spot that matters for this particular time of year, with an accuracy and a consistency that looks from the outside like simple repetition, but is in fact something much more precise than that. I have saved this one for last, because it is the one I think will stay with you the longest. The most remarkable thing about the spot your squirrel keeps returning to is not what it means right now. While you are here to see her come back to it, it is what it will mean later, after the season changes, after circumstances change, after you change. Researchers studying long-term territorial behavior in urban squirrels have documented something that most homeowners never think to look for. The core spots within a squirrel's home range, the locations she returns to most consistently, most reliably across the most seasons, persist in her behavior even when the human element of that territory changes, when a household changes, when the person who fed her stops appearing. She keeps coming back. Not forever, not without limit, but for longer than you would expect. For weeks and sometimes months after the person she associated with that spot has gone, a squirrel will return to the location at the times that person used to be there, and she will wait for a little while before moving on. She does not understand what has changed. She only knows that this spot used to mean something, and she has not yet stopped believing it might mean that thing again. The corner of the garden you stand in when you scatter the morning seed, the porch railing where you set your coffee down when you come outside, the patch of grass near the bench where you sit on Sunday afternoons. These spots are being recorded, being memorized, being attached to your presence with the particular thoroughness of a creature who builds her life around location and return. She will come back to those spots after you are gone. She will come back to them because your presence made them mean something, and meaning does not disappear the moment the thing that created it does. That is not a story about squirrels returning to spots. That is a story about what it means to matter to something, about the marks we leave in the world without knowing we are leaving them, about the small wild creatures who keep returning to the places where we used to be long after we have stopped being there to see them do it. The squirrel in your yard is memorizing you right now. She's attaching your presence to specific locations in her world with a precision and a permanence that you have never given her credit for. And when you walk to that corner of the garden tomorrow morning, she will already be there, at the spot, at the time, in the posture of waiting, because she has been keeping track of you in that place for longer than either of you has fully realized. She keeps coming back because you gave her a reason to, and she will keep coming back long after you think she has forgotten. She has not forgotten, she never does. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Is there a spot in your yard that a squirrel keeps returning to, a place that never quite made sense to you, a location you have watched her visit again and again without knowing why? Tell me about it. Where is it? What does she do when she gets there? How long has she been coming back? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week, and every single one of them matters. If anything in this video changed the way you understand what she is doing when she comes back to that spot, share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes what we notice for the rest of our lives. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. Tomorrow morning, when you look out the window and find her already there, already at the spot, already waiting, you will know something now that you did not know before. She came back because of you, she always does.